Are you somebody that can actually help this startup dominate no matter what happens and what shifts or pivots or directions kind of change as you join and help this company grow? If you're just looking for a 9-to-5 job, then the startup world is not for you. My name is Josh Pegley, and welcome back to Future Internet Billionaire. Today we are going to talk about what it takes to thrive and survive at startup, or in startups really is what I should say. Please like and subscribe, stay tuned for more content, and please comment down below for anything else you guys want to hear. Let's dive in. Alright, now you might be somebody that's read about the startup world and maybe you're really interested in startups. Maybe you don't necessarily even want to start your own startup, but you would love the idea of working for one. Now, what it's like to actually work for a startup is it's a thrilling adventure. It's going to challenge you in ways that you probably have never been challenged before. It takes you down a road where you feel like you're bringing something to life, that you're almost part of something bigger. And not only that, but there's like this thrill of competition because maybe you're starting a startup and your goal is to dethrone whoever the current dominating player in the industry is. So you get that like vibe of like we're waging war. And you know, I don't know if you ever heard this story or not, but Snapchat actually bought the book, The Art of War, for I think it was its first 16 employees because they were going and waging war against some of the biggest competitors in the industry, which were just social media companies. So you get this feeling of something that you would not normally get by working at a large company. That's one of the really cool things and what it really feels like, the energy of what it feels like to work at a startup. So now if that sounds really interesting to you, then great. That's a first kind of ding or check mark that you need to be thinking about when you're thinking, what is it really like to work at a startup? And is it something that I think I would like? So if you like the idea of that, then good. First check mark is checked. Let's move on to the next thing. All right, the next thing is, I would ask you is, do you like roller coaster rides? Now, maybe you don't physically like roller coaster rides, but this is more of a mental roller coaster ride. Startups are very up and down. There are exciting times and there are very rough, tough times. I've been through part of 2 early stage tech startups and now I have my own startup, so I can genuinely attest to this. And I don't want this to scare anybody or make it sound like it's maybe not fun or not something that you'd be interested in. But you need to be well aware of the ride you're about to go on. It's very different from working for a large company where you have a very stable 9-to-5, a pretty consistent schedule, and a pretty predictable path to maybe promotions or success. Now, a lot of people join companies kind of like to build a career. Now, this is not something that I would tell you to do at a startup, or at least not have that mental image of, I'm going to join this company and for the next 20 or 30 years, I'm going to build a career here. Now, why do I say that? I say that because it's actually true that 95% of startups fail. So take that into consideration. There's a big risk when you're joining a startup if you're a career builder or you like stability and predictability. This is not going to be the path you're going to want to travel down if that's something you're pursuing, even if you like the idea of the excitement and the fun aspect that I just described previously. If you're risk averse or maybe are not in a place where you can take risk in your life, then this roller coaster ride is probably something that's going to cause you a lot of stress in your life. Take that into consideration. If you're not necessarily a risk-averse person and you actually are like, hey, I'm down, the risk adds to the fun of it, right? Then great. Check that box off because that's a big part of startups and that's something you definitely want to keep in mind when joining a startup. Let's move on to the next thing. Now, the next thing that I would like to talk about is something that I think is important throughout your entire life, which is learning. Now, even though 95% of startups fail and there is a lot of risk, There is a massive opportunity to learn when you join a startup. Startups require you to learn and wear many hats a lot of the time. So again, if that's kind of a personality trait that you like, and you are able to wear multiple hats, you are able to adapt into a role, you are able to learn quickly, then this is probably a good fit for you. If you're not, then you might want to really take that in consideration and evaluate. You know, there's kind of a popular saying out in the world where it says like, hey, that's not what I was hired for. Like that wasn't in my job description. Welcome to the world of startups. That is going to be the case all the time. It was not something that was described to you ahead of time. It was not necessarily what you thought you were going to be hired for. And even though your main role probably will stay consistent, there are going to be many things that you've never done before that you will be asked to do, especially in an early stage startup. So if the idea of that excites you and you like that and you love to learn, then check that off your box, because that's exactly what you'll get as a startup. If you're not that type of person, you like to kind of coast and just do what you know you like to do, you like to be consistent and predictable, then this maybe is not the best path for you. Now, one more thing that I want to kind of draw your attention to really is that when you join a startup, there's something really important that you have to take into account. And it's the fact that you can't just join a startup to join a startup. I'm telling you, it's a much harder path than working for an established, more predictable, structured company. You really have to believe in what they're building and the team behind them. And I really do mean that, because if you join a startup just because it's a startup and you think their idea is kind of crap and it's never going to work, you are absolutely the wrong fit for that company. Do not join the startup unless you really believe that it has the potential to become a great company and that the people you're joining and working with have what it takes to make it happen. They don't have to have all the experience in the world, but they have to have the drive and the wisdom to make it happen. So take that into account, because that would definitely increase the odds of their success. That's kind of another checkbox that you want to keep in mind. It's not whether you should work at a startup or not. It's just something when you're evaluating, should I work for a startup and what should I be looking for? It's definitely believe in the idea that it can be very real. It solves a problem and it's going to be valuable to the world, and the people you're working with are going to actually be able to make it happen. Now, what I want to go into is kind of a little bit of a rapid fire. I touched on some of the bigger things, but I want to go into more of a little rapid fire, just qualities that you need to either develop or keep in mind or should probably have if you're going to join a startup. It'll make your life easier, and this should help you also kind of evaluate, am I cut out to work for a startup or not? Should I maybe go work for a bigger, well-established company? So let's see if you have these qualities and what it takes to actually thrive and help the new startups of the world dominate whichever one you choose to join. Let's dive into this list real quick. All right, number one, you have to be okay with the unknown and risk. I did previously touch on that, but it is really important. Are you okay with the unknown and risk? This is ever present and very real in a tech startup. Number two, you have to be okay with wearing multiple hats. I also touched on this one already, but it is very important. Your role is ever changing. There are always demands and needs that you didn't initially sign up for. Are you somebody that can actually help this startup dominate no matter what happens and what shifts or pivots or directions kind of change as you join and help this company grow? Number three, you have to be a hard worker. Now, everybody likes to think of themselves as hard workers. I understand that. But there are very different definitions of hard work. The reality of this one is that it is very hard work. It's long hours, because you're not just filling a role. You're not just maintaining something. A lot of the time, you are building something that has never existed before, and you are not only just building something and trying to get it out to the market, but you're trying to dethrone a competitor that already has a hold and doesn't want you to succeed. And so in order to overcome that and get this thing created, you have to work harder than that established, comfortable company is working. So it's going to require more out of you. Keep that in mind as well. Number four, you have to be selfless. You got to remember that this is not just about you. You really have to adopt that I'm a team player mindset. I've said this a lot and in past videos, especially on my wife's channel, Miss Brandy Morgan, and I adopted in my own company that I'm here to help everybody win. You need to adopt that mindset because you have to be a team player. It's not about you being a superstar. And in order to do that, you have to be selfless in this journey. Again, it's not a career move for you. You're building something and being part of something that is part of a core team. It's going to take everybody investing in each other and putting it all in on the company to make it happen. So be selfless and be a team player. That's another really important quality. Number 5, you have to be business minded. A startup, even if you're coming in as a developer, a marketer, a salesperson, a customer support rep, whatever your role is in this startup, you need to understand the business behind it. Don't just be so laser focused on your one little sliver that you're not able to give feedback or participate in any other area of the company. By being business minded, it's going to help you help the company in a major way because you will understand if I do X, it'll produce Y on the business side. You may be passionate about building something or doing a specific task, but maybe it doesn't actually impact the output and outcome of the company of where they're trying to go. By you being business minded, you will stay focused on the actual result and goal that you guys are trying to achieve as a company, as a team. So keep that in mind, read business books, do whatever you can to adopt that business mindset because it's really important in the startup world. After all, you are building a business. That's all a startup is. Number 6, I have touched on this before. This kind of goes back to being somebody that's able to do multiple roles. You have to be a sponge. You have to be an aggressive learner. Your role will always change and you're going to be asked to do many things that you've never done before. And that's where the aggressive learning comes into play. Being somebody that knows how to pick up a book, do a Google search, and learn a skill that you don't know how to do currently is really important in the startup world. Number 7, you have to be self-motivated and self-managed. Nobody in a startup has time or wants to hold your hand and manage you. You need to be somebody that can take action and be on their own and still be an aggressive executor and achiever to move the company forward. In a startup, resources are very limited in the early days and everybody's going to do everything they can in their own role. They don't have time to come and help you with yours. So again, you all are a team, you're all there to help each other, but in reality, you should be very aware of this and not heavily dependent on everybody else to get what you need to get done. So guys, that's a little bit of a backstory of what it's like to work at a startup, a list of the qualities that I think are really important if you're planning on joining a startup or you're about to join a startup. These are things that are really important and going to be critical to your journey to succeed and thrive in the startup world. And again, if these are not things that you think you can do or you can achieve, that's okay. It just means you're more cut out for a larger, more established company. But if this sounds like you're checking those boxes, then hey, you're probably a great fit for a startup. Thank you so much for watching this video and taking time out of your day. I really, really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe below. Comment any other qualities maybe that you think are important. I'd love to see them. And again, thank you so much. We'll see you on the next video.